this is where we're at.
And now, oh, and you see the merch. Look at the merch. Princess AGTV, the merch. And so we are here. Hello.
Hi.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
This is the gift shop.
Go ahead and start making your way to the loading area. Follow the arrows on the floor.
How's everyone doing today?
Good.
We all ready to go underground?
Yeah. Yep.
Has anyone been underground before?
No.
No?
Yes.
You have? Awesome. All right, folks, I'm going to take those tickets as we walk through this door here. Just be very careful when you're walking over this door. The threshold will trip you up, okay? All right, folks, well, welcome to the Consolidated Gold Mine. Thank you for coming, and hopefully you enjoy yourself while we're under here. Notice this ladder right here, that'll be on your left. That was actually found underwater.
Oh, wow.
It was underwater for about 120 years. It's called the blue ladder. I don't know why. Maybe because the water is blue down there.
Watch out. What?
You don't want to get that. Come on in, guys. So what we're looking at here, it's called the Knight's Vein, okay? This, including the tunnel all the way that you guys just walked down, was all quartz rock at one point in time. It's actually the reason why the mine was opened back in 1898, because this quartz rock can be seen sticking out of the ground. So they knew there was a lot of gold here. All right, and it's called the Knight's Vein because it took a single day and night for them to get all this quartz out once they made it this far. You know what kind of gold they were looking for inside this quartz? Who's done the gold panning already?
None of us yet.
None of you guys have done the gold panning yet? Oh man. All right, so you guys are going to be doing the gold panning after this tour. And the gold that you find in that pan is about 10 times bigger than the gold that they would have found inside this quartz rock. It's called flour gold. And it's about the size of a grain of baking flour. That's what they would have found. And when they took this out of the ground, they found 54.9 ounces of gold in that rock. That's not really a lot of gold to be found in this vein of quartz. This is the largest vein of quartz to be found in the United States, still to this day. And they only found 54 ounces of gold. This was not a very good mine for these guys. Back then, that gold would have been worth about $26,000. Today, it's a little over $2 million. But still, this was the first vein that they took out, and it took them 2 years to get here.
Wow.
So this mine wasn't very profitable, but still left an amazing, amazing view. You should see it at sunset. It's awesome. This right here for all of our tall people is the wishing rock. If you hit it, you're going to find out why it's called that, because you wish you had it. All right? Go ahead and work our way down. This right here represents the amount of dynamite we would have used in one day.
Yeah.
So what they would have been looking for is that white rock right there in the wall. That's quartz. That's exactly what the Knight vein looked like. That's actually part of the Knight's vein. There's also some behind us here that's left for structural reasons. That's part of the Knight's vein. So back in the 1980s, when the current family that owns the mine purchased the mine, they purchased it. Obviously, they wanted to be gold miners, because who doesn't want to produce gold out of the ground? But gold back in the 80s took a big slump. Gold prices went down to almost nothing, rock bottom. So it wasn't worth it economically to try and mine this place. So what they did was they petitioned to become a National Historic Landmark, which they got. They had an assayer come down here to assay the mine, and that's the person who tells you how much gold is left and what the price of the mine would be. And about 80% of the gold that was here is still here. In fact, that wall right there, the assayer told us, and this was back in the 80s, mind you, there's about $40,000 of gold, worth of gold looking at you in that rock right now, back in the 80s. And that was back when gold was about $200 an ounce. Now we're looking at $1,900, almost $2,000 an ounce. I haven't done any of the math calculations or whatever from 40,000 to what it is today, but that's how much gold is looking at you in that rock. We can't obviously mine it because we're a National Historic Landmark, and the federal government would get very upset. But also, mining practices for hard rock mines made it infeasible to get the gold out anyways. Part of what they would have done is they would have taken all this stone and brought it over to a stamp mill. All right, and that stamp mill had 850-pound hammers attached to it. It was 120 stamp heads. Largest stamp mill on the East Coast. And they would have crushed that rock up, and it would have flown over these silver plates that were coated with mercury. And would have amalgamated onto that mercury. I don't know if anybody is familiar with how deadly mercury is, but that's a very caustic procedure, and it's also very expensive. So it makes mining the gold out of a hard rock mine just not worth it. So we turned the gold mine into another different type of gold mine.
Yeah.
This rock also has a name, okay? Colorful language rock. So be careful, because you'll have a lot of colorful language here. So at our deepest point, we're going to be at 210 feet. Right now, we're pretty close. About 200. That's the largest man-made waterfall in the city of Dahlonega.
So would that be considered like spring water, good enough
No.
you can drink? No?
No. All that brown staining is all sulfur and stuff, all stuff.
Oh, okay.
Waters. all the minerals. Scoot on in, guys. Scoot on in, guys. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how those miners got to this point. So in 1899, this mine employed 600 people, we know. And by 1899, they'd already made it, by the end of 1899, they'd already made it to that point where the nice vein was. And how they did it was with this right here. This is called a hand steel. And there's a couple more examples of them right here, because you would have to start and gradually step up. A miner was expected to drill 2 holes in a 12-hour shift using this right here. And those holes had to be 6 feet deep. All right? This right here was the second safest job in this mine. And a miner was paid twice the national average to work this mine doing this. He was paid 90 cents a day. All right? Second safest job in the mine. And what he would do is he would just take his hand steel, he would place it up against the wall or in the hole that he didn't finish, and he would smack the hand steel. And every time he smacked it, he would do a little twist on it. That little twist is so that inside here, the hole is smooth and straight. Because they had to put dynamite in that hole also. They weren't just digging the rock, they were blowing it up. And they were doing it all by hand for the first 2.5 or so years. So they made it from the beginning of the mine all the way up to the nice vein by hand for 2 years just for this.
Wow.
This cost 90 cents when the miner was handed to this on the beginning of his shift. He had to bring it back when he was done. If he did not bring it back, he did not get paid.
Oh.
A lot of the younger ones here, you've already learned about friction, right? So when you're smacking something metal repeatedly over a 6-hour period and you decide it's time for lunch, because you're now halfway through your day, and you just, lunchtime, I've been smacking that for 6 hours, my first hole's done, you go to eat, you come back, what do you think happened to that hand steel?
Oh, it's gone.
No, it's still there. In fact, it's there forever. It is there forever. It will stay in that hole and never leave.
Really?
And you will not get paid. It got so hot, the gentleman went to lunch or whatever the reason, and it stayed right there. That has been there since 1906 that we know of. Wow. That's when the mine shut down. Another gentleman over here had a really bad day. And this guy, one, didn't get paid, along with the guy who lost his hand steel. Who wants to see the safest job in this mine? The safest job.
The safest job.
Safest job in this mine. This job is conducted, follow me here this way. This job is conducted by children. Yeah. I know it's crazy to hear, but the job that we're going to talk about next was conducted by children. Come on in. Have a look. This is what's called the deep tunnel. We call this our deep tunnel. This one goes straight underground. But as you can see, it's full up with water right now. That water, where the light is about 5.5 feet deep, crystal clear, and you can see the water has like a blue tint. I think that's why they call that ladder up there, blue ladder, because of the water. So the water table, the reason why the water's there is because we hit the water table when we go too deep, okay? And that's where all the water in that waterfall is actually coming out of this mine shaft. We're actively pumping it. If we weren't actively pumping it, within about a month's time, we would be ankle deep in water. And that's what brings us to the safest job in this mine. Would have been right there. That red pump right there. That was a hand pump. Children between the ages of 8 and 15, we say 8 and 15, but really on 15th birthday, they would have been handed a hand steel. But between 8 and 15, the children would have been manning that hand pump, and they would have been towards the entrance of the mine, actively pumping up the water so that the miners didn't drown under there. And the reason why it's the safest job is because the children, even though there were no child labor laws at the time, the children would be closer to the front of the mine, so if something did happen, we could rush them out real quick. So they made an attempt to care about the children, but they would have been down here for 12 hours a day. Those kids, that water down there is the light is 5.5 feet under that water. And if you go on our Facebook page, you can actually watch Miner Jamie change that light bulb. It's hilarious because he's a short man. He's about your height. And he's wearing waders. He's not wearing a wetsuit or anything. And they get full, and there's a whole part of that video where you can't hear anything for a week. So one of the biggest innovations in gold mining, or mining in general, actually, was this right here. This stoke drill, all right? These drills were ran by an air compressor out at the stamp mill. Giant compressors, there would have been 5 of them out there, each one capable of powering 5 of these drills at a time. And these drills were used to cut holes like this. This is called a stope. If they were actively pulling ore out of this, it would have been called a stope. Now this drill was meant to go one way. You can see a base plate on it if you look at it. It gets stood up on its end, and you jackhammer up with it. That's the only way it goes. Remember that ladder in the front I was telling you about? That's a drill ladder. The reason why we know it's a drill ladder is because they took the time to cut the notches out in it, so that when they carry this drill up, it doesn't break the ladder. Because this weighs 150 pounds. This was a 2-man drill. There would have been a man carrying this ladder up the stope with the drill strapped to his back, and their scaffolding would have went straight across. And I'm going to show you that in a little bit. Their scaffolding would have been straight across. 2x6s, whatever they could get their hands on for scaffolding. Safety wasn't really a priority here because we didn't have hard hats, hearing protection, or dust masks. Who knows what quartz is mainly made of? Silica? It's made mostly out of silica, just like glass. Glass is made mostly out of silica. When that quartz dust gets into your lungs, it acts like glass. It cuts your lungs up so you're no longer able to exchange oxygen into your blood. Your skin turns blue and you get what's called silicosis and stuff that happens here. It's like, there's actually another literal gold mine in operation above us. It's been in operation for about 10 years. Ever since that property has been cleared out. And we're actually underneath the garden center wall. So that gold mine's been in operation for a while, but here about 10 years.
5 more. Or 5.
That drill.
Man, you get lost in here.
Indiana Jones.
Have a seat, sir, have a seat. So one of the biggest innovations that came out of this mine in this area was actually electricity. This mine was the first area in the entire state of Georgia to have electricity. And they sold it to the town. Now, it cost them more money to make electricity than they sold it. I'm not sure if they were trying to show off or if they were just really good southern businessmen. Not really sure. But electricity would have been in the front of the mine, and they would have had light bulbs, but not these awesome LED light bulbs that we have today that put out all this great light. They would have had Edison light bulbs. Those light bulbs weren't even as bright as a candle, okay? If those lights went out in the front part of the mine, the miners would just sit down and then would have another child. Like I said, child labor laws weren't really a thing back then, but we loved them, they would have a child running around with a bag full of light bulbs, and he would have to change every light bulb, because back then Edison light bulbs were done in a series. So, like the Christmas trees, one light goes out, they all go out, so you had to change every light bulb before you found the one that was bad.
Wow.
So they would just go through and change every single one of them. They didn't last but 24 hours at a time back then anyways, if they were running constantly. So, around these parts of the mines that we're in right now, they didn't really have light, except for a candle. And they were given 3 of these at the beginning of their shift with their hand steel, all right? The problem with these candles is they only last 2 hours. They were down here for 12 hours at a time. They had 6 hours of candlelight. Not only did they have to drill by candlelight, but they also had to do another thing by candlelight. They had to set dynamite by candlelight, and they used this high-tech piece of equipment right here to put it inside the wall. Right? Broomsticks, I mean, innovators around here, innovators. What they would do, after they were done drilling their 6-foot holes, they would get 6 sticks of dynamite. Does anybody know how volatile dynamite is? It's very volatile. You drop dynamite and it just blows up. It's nitroglycerin wrapped inside wax paper, and the filler is usually sawdust or clay. So if that nitroglycerin leaks out of the wax paper, which it will because it always did, and miners would get like a nitro headache for about a week, a really bad migraine headache from it. But not only would it just fall on the ground and blow up, if you put it in the wall too aggressive in the wall, like it would blow up. So this was a job that literally took hours. But because it's so dangerous, they didn't let just anybody do it. You had to volunteer for it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They couldn't just say, hey, you're gonna go set dynamite today, because it was very dangerous. So what they would say is, hey, who wants to make an extra $1.50 today? On top of what you're making, you're gonna stop doing whatever you're doing. You're gonna make that pay still, and you're gonna come set dynamite for $1.50. Guys would clamor for it, because again, the more money they made, the faster they were able to retire. Back then, money was different. I mean, you can go shopping for a whole week for an entire family for like, what, 15 cents back then? So money was a lot different back then. So guys would clamor for this. The only big issue is number one, no electricity, and number two, if you didn't come back, they didn't come looking for you. That's how dangerous the dynamite was. If you went to go set dynamite, and you have all the dynamite there would have been a little more than 18 holes in the wall. This wall was almost ready, almost dressed for dynamite. They would have everything in here, all the fuses set up, and they had a 3-minute fuse. That was the only authorized fuse that we know of, based on records, that was authorized here. So they would have had all their fuses bundled up to a 3-minute fuse, okay? They would have lit that fuse, and they would have, who remembers that tunnel, like when Mr. Rusty's thing came through and there was a safety tunnel right there? A little tiny tunnel. That's where they would have had to have gone. That's called the safety tunnel, because dynamite goes in a straight line. The pressure wave goes in a straight line. So they have safety tunnels so that when the dynamite goes off, you just sit there. You have to make a funny noise. I'm sorry, I was in the military. I'm not sure if anyone ever got taught this when you're going through like NBC training in the military. But you sit there and you go like this. You look, you sit like this, and you have to let go enough air out of your lungs so that they don't collapse when the pressure wave comes, but also so that it doesn't blow out your eardrums. So in the military, they have you make this weird noise. Like, I'm sorry. It's funny to do, but when you're actually doing it, when a blast is coming, it'll save your life. But that's what the miners would have had to do over there. But they would have had to do it like this.
Okay.
So now, minus all the phone lights you see, this is what they would have been like in here, just dark. Are you guys ready for the horror show?
Yeah.
There it is, look at that. You wanted to see my ugly mug by candlelight, right? This is how the miners would see down here every day. Like I said, they were handed 3 of these at the beginning of their shift.
Oh, heck no.
Now, 6 hours worth of candlelight, you're handed a hand steel and 3 of these, and you're coming down here for your 12-hour shift. How do you think that worked? I'll tell you exactly how that worked. I've been here for a while. You're new. Hey, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold on to those candles for you. You're going to take this hand steel, because you're the new guy. And you're going to sit up here for a good 30 minutes while I blast away at the hand steel with this 15-pound sledge in candlelight. Right? Now who wants to make 90 cents a day? I don't think a lot of people do when that's happening. But that's how they would double up in here. 9 times out of 10, it would be a miner that's been here a while with the new guy. That's really how it worked. The only thing is, if you're in here, there's no electricity, you're going at me, and then you hit my hand.
Yeah.
And now we're in the darkness again. So now we have to scramble to find our candles. There's a white switch right here. So it was pretty treacherous down here for the miners. But also the other really great thing about hard rock mining like this is it's hard rock. We don't have to worry about methane and all those gases coming out of the porous stone. This is the safest place actually on Earth right at the moment. You're in the safest place on Earth. If an earthquake happened, we wouldn't even know it, because that's how far underground we are. Wouldn't even know it happened. Tornado go overhead, wouldn't even know it. You wouldn't hear a thing. It's 55 degrees down here year round with 0 humidity. It's great. Yep.
So it doesn't get cold. If it's snowing up there, it's always stay 55.
It's always 55 degrees. So this thing right here is an innovation in mining. It's just how it's set up. So you would set this up, and you see you have this rail here, so you can set this right up against the thing and just go, 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 go. Get your 6 feet, pull it up and move. Fill it up with dynamite. And then go on to the next drift while they blow this one up. The thing with this drill, there would have been about 5 of these going on one drift at a time, okay? These would have been ran by the same compressors as the stoke drill. The only difference with these and the stoke drill is these ran at a higher PSI. They would have been running at 180 PSI full tilt. And they were loud. They were very loud. Everyone can hear the echo under here, right? I'm going to turn this thing on for you because it's one of 4 in the world. One that works. One of 4 that's put together. One that works. It's the worst of them all. Worst looking of them all because this one's actually underwater. But it's all original. This is exactly how it's set up except for this one bolt right here. This just stops the drill from becoming a javelin thrower. So we changed that for safety. I'm going to turn it on. It's running at 40 PSI. So it's running way less than it would have been running. And we're going to hear how loud it is. And when I turn it off, everyone just keep quiet for a second because you're going to hear some, mostly for the kids, you're going to hear something really, really, really cool, okay? You guys ready for this?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to do this in 29, 28, 27. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, the echo.
Kind of sounds like thunder, right? 15 of these drills we found, so we know at least 15 of them would have been going down here at one time. Like I said, there was 5 drill compressors up there. So do the math on how many could have been running at one time. We know 50. The only problem with this is a miner was expected to keep his hearing for about 3 months. Because hearing protection wasn't invented until 1907, a year after we closed. Miners went to management with that issue because if you're deaf, you can't be a miner. If they're blowing up something over there, you can't hear them, say, fire in the hole or hear the steam whistle. So it was a safety hazard. So guys were getting fired and they were going to management. Management came up with a great idea, ingenious. They said, we're going to allow you to work on this drill for 2 weeks. While you're working on the drill, you're going to get paid $2 a day.
More
All
money.
right? That's a lot of money. In 6 months, land, house, everything paid off. They could retire. So guys were clamoring for it, right? So during that 2 weeks you were on here, you were making $2 a day. While you're off the drill, you're still making $2 a day because they want you to come right back to it, right? So with that rotation, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, you were expected to keep your hearing for a total of about 8 months. 8 months. There's actually a story in the Gold Museum, if you guys have visited that today, where the miners came out of the hole one day and walked up behind one of those deaf miners and shot a shotgun up behind his head, and he didn't even flinch. And the guy from the local paper, the Nugget, was there, and they wrote a whole article about, and that's what actually prompted management to make these changes. Well, like I said, hearing protection wasn't invented until a year after we closed down. Guys would try to do everything they could, but 9 times out of 10, within 6 months, they were stone cold deaf. Wives weren't happy, but the miners went home happy. I don't know why, but that's what the story was. They all burnt down the same day, mysteriously. A lot of it was money management issues. The people who owned this mine originally were really bad with money. They cooked the books. We know that for a fact. It looked like they were pulling more money out than they were spending. What we do know is by the end of 1899, there were 600 people employed here. We don't know how many of them were miners. Though, knowing everything was done by hand back then with paper, I would say roughly 50 of those people were men in the office, and about 550 were underground. Just the amount of time it took for them to get to the Knights Bank ran out of dynamite, and they couldn't make it fast enough. Those dynamite boxes up the front, those represent how much dynamite we would have used in a day. It was a little over 40 pounds. And it had to get shipped in from Michigan, and no vehicles back then. It was all donkeys, mules, and horses. And they had to go very slow because of how volatile the dynamite was. So, smooth ride. Yeah, it had to be a very smooth ride. And the other issue that they had here was there was a 2-year drought from 1902 to 1904. So the mine wasn't really doing anything because everything was water powered back then, the water wheels. And the river was so low. And then in 1905, there was an abundance of water, so they blew 2 of the water wheels went down the river because there was so much water. So there was really just a lot of problems with this mine, not just with management, but it just wasn't meant to be, I guess. But it's the only gold mine in the state of Georgia you can visit. It's the only safe one in the state of Georgia you can visit. All the others are closed down or privately owned still. So, chisels that would have been in the drills themselves, you can see how it's hollow, just so that they can shoot the water through it. But these are mostly the drill heads and chisels that they would have used, and of course, wrenches that they would have used to make all this work. And this was all found together down here. So the mine itself was underwater, completely underwater, for a little over 100 years. When they finally opened up the entrance is right around the corner here. It's about 100 meters that way. When they finally opened up the entrance for the first time back in the 80s, there was a deluge of water that came out of the entrance of the mine into the Chestatee River that lasted a week. Yeah, they got video of it. I mean, it's crazy how much water came out of here, but all of this was underwater. And I know it looks like, a weird, cool floor, but this was all sediment well, not we, I didn't. That they cleared out, that was cleared out to make it, and this is just what's left over. So, this depth that we can check right now, because again, the records house went down, burned down, but as of right now, what we know of is 600 feet. And that's where all that water from that thing comes, because it's at the water table. And that's when they stopped digging. Because they had to have too many pumps. Yep. So, and you have to remember, this mine was a little over 4,000 acres, and it was a conglomerate, so it was a consolidated mine. This mine encompassed about 14 other mines that were on this mountain. This mountain used to be huge. Okay, when they first opened this mine, they were taking water jets from the river and just spraying the side of the mountain to get all the topsoil off of it. And all that topsoil contained gold also, and that was going down sluices that were built into the ground. So all the sluices were built in the ground on the way to the river. And that's what they would use to clean up. And then when the California gold rush happened, everyone left. And they left the quartz that you could see. That's why the quartz was sticking up out of the ground. They knew it was here. They didn't know how to mine it yet. When the California gold rush happened, that's when hard rock mining really became a thing. Because in California, when you hard rock mine in California, you're finding nuggets like huge pounds in the quartz, whereas here it's flour gold. So they brought all of that technology here to try, because they thought they were going to get that same kind of gold here. So that's why they brought it here. But I mean, they got a good amount of gold. The only amount that we know of is at the Knight's Vein. How much they got out of that first stover, all that's gone, all that information's gone. So that's the only reason why we mentioned that one, because that's the only one that we know how much gold they got out of. I'm sure it was a viable mine, or else they would not have mined it. But it's a good story when you tell people how bad the businessmen they were, because they were horrible businessmen. The people who owned this mine were horrible businessmen. They overpaid everybody. Twice the national average for a gold mine back then was outrageous. And so, I mean, people just came here from everywhere. They didn't even care. Give me a hand to I'm going to work at 90 cents a day, please. So this is actually my favorite part of the mine and the tour itself. As we're making our way up, you can actually see how they mined the ore. It's really cool. You can see how they cut in for their scaffolding on the side of the wall right there, and you'll see the drill marks going straight up. Another thing you're going to see on the left-hand side as you go up is stalagmites and stalactites, okay? All we ask is that you please do not touch them, because the oils from your fingers or your hands in general will stop them from growing, and we're super proud of them. They grow about an inch a year. So that's about, and you can see how big they are. So they've been down here growing for a while, all right? There's the good look at the name on them boxes. Now they claim to have no association. The health insurance company, Aetna, they claim to have no association with the Aetna High Explosives Company. But upon further research, I can tell you that the Aetna High Explosives Company shut down, and 5 months later, mysteriously, Aetna Health Insurance opened up. It's almost like they created a problem and came up with a solution. Look up here, if you look up, you can see where they went. They went sideways into the wall underneath. Yeah, all right, yeah. So this is where, if you have a gym membership, go ahead and cancel it. And just remember, it's not a race, folks. Take your time, all right? I'm gonna be ahead of you so I'm not out of wind and looking like a out of shape tour guide when you get up there. All right? Nice. All right, folks. Hopefully you had a great time. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself. If you did, my name is Chris. All right? And we're gonna go in here and do some gold painting, right? Mm-hmm. All right, and if you didn't enjoy yourself, my name is Joe. You can just let manage me. And I don't know.
Full of water, you want to take your gold pan and shake it from left to right, right to left. And as you're shaking it, you'll notice a red line that we've drawn around the pan. Now that red line is going to help you. What you want to do is while you're shaking your gold pan, gently tilt that gold pan a little bit away from you and work that sand up to that red line, but not past it.
How are you getting the sand out?
Blue, that's why I like it.
Oh, I do see some gold in here.
Uh-oh.
I don't know if it's enough to
is the
retire
second purest
off
made out
of.
of the ground on the planet. The only place with slightly pure gold.
There's my gold. Oh, okay.